So I thought I'd do a video a little bit different from the music videos I normally do. I thought I would ask the question, which has been asked before many times by other people, but what was the best year for metal? I am old enough and lucky enough to have been a teenager and in my early 20s during the 1980s, and in my opinion, experienced by far the best decade for rock and metal in particular. And this video is a pitch for the best year in metal. And you might be able to tell from the thumbnail which year I am going to talk about. That's right, it is 1986, 40 years ago, which seems like a good time to revisit that year. In 1986, I was 17 and I was going into my last year at high school. I'd been buying metal records, vinyl records at the time, for about 4 or 5 years with my paper round money. And by this point, I think I had a pretty good record collection. I had every Kerrang magazine since issue 19, way back in the early 1980, 1982, I think it was. I was a lead guitar player in two bands at school. We were shit, but hey, I think either way, I think I've established my credentials back in '86 for having a decent knowledge of metal and a fairly good experience of metal. Um, and I do remember this year particularly well. It was just a great year for metal, in my opinion. There were so many. Every single week there was a great release coming out, so I was spending all my paper round money on records. So why do I think 1986 was possibly the best year for metal? Well, what I'll do is I'm going to take a look at some of the metal and some rock albums that were released in 1986 and see if you agree with me or not. By all means, put your views in the comments section below. Um, Please don't be too upset if I don't talk about an album that's your personal favourite. These are my personal favourites from 1986 and what makes it such a great year for me personally in metal. It could be a long video, and I'm just improvising this. I'm going to leave all the mistakes and the ums and the ahs and me talking crap. So please forgive me. It saves me having to edit the video afterwards. So I'll have a look at my personal top 10 in no particular order. They're not ranked, and there were so many great albums this year. There's quite a lot of honourable mentions as well that I'll put at the end. Okay, so what is the evidence for the prosecution in the court's case that 1986 was the best year for metal? Okay, so in no particular order, you'll not be surprised to see this album. Master of Puppets by Metallica, released in March of 1986. I was lucky enough to go and see them on this tour, so I saw Metallica in the fall, the autumn of 1986 on this tour with Cliff Burton. Just 2 weeks before he died. So it was quite a poignant gig. It was an amazing gig. Anthrax were supporting, who were amazing as well. But what a gig. Anthrax and Metallica back in 1986, both together on the same bill. Amazing. So I don't really have to go over why this album is so great. So many great songs and riffs. It's not my favourite Metallica album. That happens to be the previous release, Ride the Lightning, for reasons that I might cover in another video. But there's no doubt this is a metal classic, and it definitely deserves to be in any top 10 list of metal releases from 1986. So we're starting off with a pretty obvious one, and the next one is probably pretty obvious as well. Is Slayer's Rain and Blood, released about 6 months later. And again, I was lucky enough to see Slayer on the Rain and Blood tour. I think it was 1987 by the time they got to the UK and Scotland, where I saw them. And this album just blew my mind when I heard it. I was already a Slayer fan at this point. I got into Slayer when Show No Mercy came out, which I still think is a great album. Haunting the Chapel, when it came out, I was blown away by that EP. Hill Awaits was great, but it wasn't actually as good as I hoped it would be, and it's still not my favourite Slayer album by any manner of means. But this album just blew my mind. I remember hearing a couple of tracks on the radio on Tommy Vance's Friday Rock Show in the UK. Some of you might remember that, and I just heard a couple of tracks off that, and I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?" Went out and bought it. I was going to get it anyway, and I was just blown away by the sheer speed and ferocity of this album. So again, there's probably so much has been said about this album. I don't think I need to say any more than that. But this again definitely deserves to be on the top 10 list. And here's another album that probably won't surprise you. Megadeth Peace Cells, released just a month before Rain and Blood in the UK. And this was a really influential album for me because I've been playing guitar for a couple of years at this point, and I just loved some of Mustaine's riffs on this album, trying to figure some of them out. Um, and this is probably my second favourite Megadeth album after the obvious Rust in Peace, although I do love Countdown to Extinction as well. But it's full of great riffs, great solos. The production's quite muddy and a little bit reverby, but I really like that, and I actually prefer the original mix to the remix that came out a few years ago. That was a little bit cleaner. I actually prefer the muddiness of the original production, which is actually part of the appeal for me. And just out of interest, actually, I didn't see Megadeth on this tour, but I saw them on the So Far So Good So Hot tour a couple of years later. I don't think they came to Scotland for to promote this album. But Megadeth are the band I've seen the most times live. I've seen Megadeth live 5 times from '88 through to '94. So this album has a special place in my heart, and I still think it's a great album even now. Here's another piece of evidence for '86 being the best year for metal. Somewhere in Time. Again, you're probably not surprised to see this one. Um, I don't think I saw Maiden on this tour either. I think I saw them on the Seventh Son tour. Didn't see them on this tour. Can't remember why I didn't go. But I really like this album. It's probably my maybe second or third favourite Maiden album. Even though it kind of heralded in the use of synths, I think they're quite subtle on this album for the most part. And again, I just think some great songs on there. I love the sound of the album. The production, it doesn't sound like any other Maiden album, in my opinion. I think, great riffs, great songs, and it just captures the peak of Maiden for me. I think the peak of Maiden was around about '84 through to about '86 or thereabouts. So for me, the singles, Wasted Years and Stranger in a Strange Land, just the whole vibe of Maiden at this time really appealed to me. I mean, Maiden was the first metal band I properly got into when The Number of the Beast came out, so I've got a soft spot for '80s Maiden anyway, so I'm a bit biased, but what a great album. Brilliant album. Next one on my list is almost a million miles away from the previous 4 albums. Despite being, in my opinion, a metalhead through and through, I've always had a soft spot for Bon Jovi, 80s Bon Jovi, late 80s anyway, because they wrote some good songs. Even though he was a heartthrob and all the girls were screaming and stuff, and it didn't appeal to a lot of metal fans, I really like this album. And the album afterwards, New Jersey. I really like that album too. They're just really great songs, great production, good guitar playing. I think Richie Sambora was an underrated guitarist back at this point. I've also included the original album cover that some people might not remember. That the album came out with this cover initially, that one below, for a short time before it was redone, banned, shall we say, and then the more boring one came out shortly afterwards. But I think this is a great album. I think it deserves to be on a list of best albums of 1986. So there we go. That is a little bit of a break from all the hard metal. And here's another album in a kind of similar vein to Bon Jovi, although better in my opinion, is Boston. I've been a fan of Boston since I heard More Than a Feeling on the radio back in about '82, I think it was, and I just loved quality AOR music. And Boston's a great example of that. I remember a number of people were disappointed with Third Stage when it came out. It was obviously their third album, and it had been like an 8-year wait since the previous album, don't look back. And I think some people were really disappointed in it, but I think time has shown that it's actually a really great album with some fantastic songs on it. Possibly too many ballads, but some great rocking songs on here. I just love the Boston sound. I was so excited when this album came out because I've been waiting for a long time, along with other people, for this album. Expectations were high. Um, I I can understand why some people were a bit disappointed by it, but I can still listen to it now, and I still think the songs are great. The sound's great. Amazing harmonised guitar playing on it. Brad Delp still belting it out. An amazing singer, Brad Delp. His last kind of full album with the band, as far as I can remember. But some great vocals on here, huge guitar sound. What an album. Definitely deserves to be in the list as far as I'm concerned. And then we're back to the heavy stuff again. I remember hearing Creator for the first time, and again, they were just super fast, super muddy, just super aggressive. Still listen to Creator now, and at the time, it was some of the fastest and most intense thrash that had come out. Really rough and ready, muddy production, but again, I think that's part of its appeal. Some great riffs, some super fast drumming, super fast riffs. Um, yeah, that rough and readiness I really love. Like most thrash back in these days, apart from Metallica and maybe Slayer, a lot of it was just rough and ready, pure production, but that was part of its appeal. So I think this is one of Creator's best albums. I think I probably prefer Terrible Certainty. The next album's slightly better, but yeah, this was a peak thrash for 1986. The next one will divide opinion, I would imagine. I think back in the 80s, if you knew who Yngwie Malmsteen was, you either loved him or you hated him. I loved him in the 80s. I kind of went off him after that, but I think Yngwie was at his absolute peak round about this time, and I was getting into guitar playing, and I'd never heard guitar playing like it. I actually heard him for the first time on this album. For some reason, I'd actually kind of missed him up to this point. He wasn't getting a lot of magazine coverage at that point, but I remember hearing Trilogy on the radio on Tommy Vance's rock show again. I was like, wow, what is that? And they played another track. I think it might have been The Fury, or Fury, and I just thought this is amazing. I'd never heard guitar playing like it. That's super neoclassical. And I think I may have covered this in another video, but I think Yngwie was an amazing guitar player back in his day. I think he's rehashed far too much of his stuff. I don't think he's anywhere near as good as he used to be. But this is peak Yngwie for me, so I can understand a lot of people wouldn't like to have this album on the list, but as far as I'm concerned, it's in my top 10. So there we go. There's Yngwie. This is another one that's maybe a little bit off the wall compared to some of the other albums we've been looking at, but I really like some Stryper stuff. And I remember Stryper being around. I remember I got this album when it came out at the time. To Hell with the Devil, and for those, I'm sure you're familiar with Stryper, but for those that aren't, they were kind of one of the first Christian metal bands. It came out at the same time as all the satanic stuff was coming out as a kind of counter to that. And I'm not Christian, I'm definitely agnostic, but the message aside, I think Stryper made some amazing songs, and there's some great songs on this album. When Stryper rock, they really rock. They've got a great guitar sound, great drum sound. Michael Sweet's a great singer. Some people don't like him because he sings very high, but I think he's got a great voice. God, he can hit some high notes. And I don't like some of the ballads on this album. And I think what really I found a bit weird at the time was that when he was singing about "I Love You" and stuff, back in the 80s, you expected that to be about a woman. But in actual fact, he's singing about God and Jesus. So I found it a bit strange, at the time. But yeah, some of the rocking songs on here are absolutely amazing. And the album before, Soldiers Under Command, is the same. I was less keen on the album after this, which I think was In God We Trust, although that title track is amazing. But yeah, this is overall, this is a great album. Amazing guitar, as I love their guitar sound, and their lead sound as well, and some really cool guitar playing on this album. So yeah, I've got some really fond memories of this album, and I still like to listen to it now. And then my final one of the top 10, another possibly contentious one. And Vinnie Vincent has been in the rock news fairly recently, and I think he has lost it a little bit in terms of his intellectual capabilities, trying to sell his album for, was it $2 million or something like that. I think his first single came out from this new amazing album that cost $200 or $300, and now you have to pay. Is it $2 million, $200,000? Can't remember. A crazy amount of money for the so-called best album in the world, and he's clearly having mental issues, Vinnie Vincent. And I do believe that he's always been a bit of a difficult person, full stop. I have seen Vinnie Vincent live. I saw him when he was in Kiss. I didn't know who he was at the time, so he didn't really register with me. And he was actually pretty good in Kiss, actually. He did some really good stuff in Kiss. But I love this album. It's one of my favourite kind of guitar shred albums. And the one afterwards, what's it called again? All Systems Go is pretty good, but this is by far my favourite Vinnie Vincent album. I don't know what it is about it. Great songs. Uh, I mean, the guitar playing's off the chart. If it's all real, I do remember he faced some accusations of speeding up his playing on the tapes at the time. I don't know if that's true or not, but and his guitar playing's all over the place at times. But overall, I think yes, some great songs on here. I don't think there's any fillers on this album. I think every song is really good. I remember hearing it at the time, thinking it was great, and even now I still listen to it. 40 years later. Definitely his peak. I know things went wrong for him after that for all sorts of reasons, but yeah, I absolutely love this album. So these are my 10 first top contenders, and then there's loads of honourable mentions we'll have a quick look at. So these are some of the other albums, and a lot of these could have actually been in the top 10 as well. Albums that I think were great from this year: Van Halen, 5150. I know a lot of people didn't like this album because Dave had gone and Sammy Hagar came in, but I think this is a great album. I think there's some really good songs on it, and I think Sammy Hagar does really well. Embarrassing at times when he's trying to sound like Dave, but other times I think there's some amazing songs, great vocal performance. So I love that album. Whiplash, Power and Pain, another thrash album. The album at the time that had three Tonys, the only band I can ever remember where everybody in the band had the same name. But there's some really cool riffs on there. Again, really rough and ready, but that's part of its appeal. Queensryche, Rage for Order. I remember this album. Really cool album. Their second best album, in my opinion. Well, maybe third, before Operation Mindcrime and Empire. But yeah, there's some really cool songs on Rage for Order. Really good album. Another thrash one, Destruction. I remember getting Destruction Sentence for Death when it came out a year or two beforehand, and I really liked Destruction because they were quite technical riffs for the time. So this is peak Destruction for me. Onslaught, the Force, band from the UK, really cool album. Their second album, their first album was a little bit more punky, but yeah, this is a really cool album. I saw Onslaught live in 1988, and they were really good. Tesla, I played this album to death, Mechanical Resonance. What an album. Some really cool songs on there. I haven't listened to it for a long time, so I'll have to go back and listen to it again. But I remember I listened a lot to that album at the time. Next album along, Magnum, Vigilante. Anybody from the UK will know Magnum, kind of British AOR. They were slightly more progressive earlier in their career, but they came about more commercial by the mid to late 80s. And I think Vigilante is probably their second best album, in my opinion, just after Storyteller's Night. Lots of great songs, great production, produced by Roger Taylor from Queen. Great songs. Tony Clarkin, I think his name was. I think it was. Yeah. Anyway, he was a great songwriter. He did all the songwriting for that album. Wasted, another UK band with Pete Way, formerly of UFO. Another kind of AOR album. Some great songs on here. Fantastic songs, and I still listen to this album from time to time, as I do the Magnum album. Who else have we got? Queen, Kind of Magic came out in 1986. I know Queen were becoming quite poppy by this point, but I still think they were really listenable, and there's some great songs on this album. For me, Queen were still delivering by this point. Next one along is Racer X for the Shredders, Paul Gilbert's first band. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've got a funny feeling that their first two albums came out in the same year. Street Lethal, which is their debut album, then Second Heat, I think, came out later in the same year, 86, I think. Both great albums. This album is just Paul on his own. In terms of guitar, just a four-piece. Amazing playing. Absolutely amazing playing, all recorded pretty much live with some overdubs from what I understand, because apparently they rehearsed it so much they were able to record it really, really quickly. But oh, there's some amazing guitar playing on this album. The second album is when Bruce Boulier joins the band, so there are a five-piece twin guitar, and it's a little bit more polished, the second album, and it's still great. There's some great songs on there, but I really love the rough and readiness of the first album. But they're both great albums. Candlemass's first album came out in 1986. I think it's not as good as Nightfall, but the second album, but Epis Dumicus Metallicus, or whatever it is. I remember hearing that at the time, and I hadn't heard metal quite like that before. Slow, kind of plodding, but deliberately plodding metal. And anybody who plays guitar might agree with me that actually playing slow is actually sometimes more difficult than playing fast, because your timing has to be absolutely spot on when you play really slowly. But yeah, I really like Candlemass's first couple of albums. Another thrash one, Dark Angel, Darkness Descends. I think their most recent album is just so disappointing, but this is the kind of peak Dark Angel. And the two albums after this were great. Super fast with Gene Hoglan on drums, just super thrash. And I saw Dark Angel live in the late 80s, and they were just amazing. Possessed at the Gates, their second album. I love Possessed along with Death, the kind of first two death metal bands. Again, super rough and ready. Their first album, Seven Churches, was great. I really like this album as well. Slightly more polished than the previous album, but still really, really good. Crimson Glory. I prefer their second album, Transcends, to this album, but this was their first album, and I really like it. Midnight had an amazing voice, super high again, even higher than Michael Sweet. But again, great riffs, great guitar playing, great twin lead of John Drennan, I think his name was. Now I can't remember the other guy's name. I know they're still going with a new vocalist, and I haven't really listened to them, so I'll need to give that a go. But first two albums from Crimson Glory, amazing. Ozzy, Ultimate Sin came out in 1986. Not my favourite Ozzy album. I think the previous one was better, and I think the one after this was better. But Jakey Lee playing on here, and I think Jakey Lee, what a guitar player. Not underrated actually. People who know Jakey Lee know how good he is, but I think he was actually underappreciated by Sharon and maybe even Ozzy as well. And like a lot of former employees of the Osbournes, treated like shit. But what a player. And then another one, last one I have on my list is Nuclear Assault, Game Over, first album from Nuclear Assault. Great album again, and I saw them live as well. I think they played with Dark Angel, so Dark Angel and Nuclear Assault on the same bill and the same night. Great gig, what a gig. So yeah, there we go. That is just over 23 minutes coming up. That's not too bad actually. So there we go. That is why I think 1986 has a strong case to be the best metal year. Best year for metal ever. There is another year that I think is a strong contender as well, so I'm going to do another video for that in the next week or two. A year not too far away from this one, which I think is another strong contender as well. But there you go, 1986, possibly, if not probably, the best album for best year for metal ever. It'll never be topped. So many great releases in one year. Every week there was another great album coming out. And I was so busy buying record after record after record. Great days, great memories. Can't believe it was 40 years ago. So if you agree or disagree, pop any comments down below. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on 1986. Thank you very much for listening.